Thank you, Jocelyn. Today's scripture reading may seem odd. It starts off as this beautiful invocation of nature, of the glory of the night sky, of the sun passing over the course of the earth, rising like an athlete ready to race across the sky. Then suddenly, we're talking about all these rules that govern human behavior. They're presented as blessings, instructions that refresh, that gladden, that are sweeter than honey. This too sounds poetic, but still it's a radical jump from the heavens and the stars down to what human beings do. The psalm writer is suggesting that the laws of nature, which govern the movement of the sun and the stars, are on a continuum with the laws which govern human behavior. That physics and morality are the same thing. They're the rule for the behavior of all things, humans, stars, animals, and everything else. That there's a grand order, a cosmic design that governs the most distant star and the conduct of the human heart. That idea of a continuum between what happens way out there and what happens in here strikes us as odd. We're used to seeing nature as something which is outside of ourselves. We admire it. On a fall day, we can look at it and say how beautiful that is. But we don't say how beautiful we are. We say how beautiful that is, because nature is seen as exterior to ourselves. We may be profoundly grateful that nature exists and provides us with beauty as well as sustenance and rest and food. But we also see nature as an obstacle. It has its own agenda. It doesn't seem very much like a friend when our car is stuck in the snow and we're trying to dig ourselves out, or when a flood has washed away our street, or a wildfire threatens to burn down our whole neighborhood. We often wrestle with nature, frustrated by its resistance to our will. How we act as people, whether we tell the truth to each other or lie, whether we steal from each other or give generously, none of that seems to have anything to do with the orbit of the planets or the sun's movements. Human behavior seems to be its own separate department. We're an exceptional species because we have free will. We're not governed by instinct. So we can choose what we want to do. So the sun may not have a choice about what happens to it, but we have a choice about what happens to us. That idea that we are self-governed has influenced our scientific ideas about what it means to be human. 70 years ago, in 1953, scientists announced the discovery of the structure of the DNA molecule. At the time, it was seen as the key to finally understanding the secrets of the human body and the human mind. It was thought that whatever makes us unique as animals on this planet, our capacity for consciousness and creativity, our ability to make tools to take over entire landscapes, whatever that is, that secret ingredient about who we are as human beings, it's going to be in our DNA. And 30 years ago, in the 1990s, scientists set out to map every single gene in human DNA. This was called the Human Genome Project. It was hoped that if they could map all of our DNA, they could find the genes which give us our uniqueness, why we have this kind of intelligence which is unparalleled in the animal world. With a complete map of our genes, scientists hope to be able to explain the causes of many diseases. Why do people get these particular types of cancer? Where does Parkinson's come from? Why are some people susceptible to heart disease and not others? Perhaps those were all genetic traits which we could find. Map the genome, and we'll finally understand the secret of life. 20 years ago, In 2003, the project was completed, and it came with some major surprises. The first was that many of our genes are not unique at all. 98.8% of all the genes in your body can also be found in a chimpanzee. So we are less than 2% different genetically than chimpanzees. And yet, obviously, when you look at a chimpanzee, there's a lot of differences. Perhaps more surprising is that 50% of our genes can be found in a banana. You think you're so special? Well, so's a banana, apparently. 60% of our genes can be found in a chicken. These fellow life forms need proteins and enzymes just like we do, and many of them use exactly the same kind. The chemistry of life is very similar between bananas and chickens and human beings. We're made of the same stuff, and the same rules apply within us. Our psalm suggests that there's a continuity between the sun and the stars and us. Well, the Human Genome Project found that there's a great continuity between us and every living creature on Earth. That's how we're built. But there was another surprise lurking in the human genome results. Something that makes us strangely special, but not in the way we expected. When the project started, scientists expected that they would find that human beings have about 100,000 genes. We're special. Surely that takes a lot of genes. But it turns out we only have about 20,000. Now, to put that in perspective, your Christmas tree has 40 to 50,000 genes, and you just have 20,000. Now, you may wonder why that is. Well, trees can't run from danger, and they can't go down to a bar or use Tinder to get a date. You know, everything they do is done standing still, so nature has given them a whole lot of strategies for making their leaves taste bad to animals they don't want to eat, and so they can communicate with mycelial networks and their roots. It's hard being a tree. It's really tough being a tree, and you need a lot of genes to pull off a successful life as a tree. But weirdly, you don't need as many genes to be a human being. So how does this work? How do we turn out to be these wonderful world-conquering creatures if we have so few genes? Well, it turns out that our genes are masters at multitasking. One stretch of DNA can be used to create 20, 30 different types of proteins. We reuse the same stretches of DNA over and over again to make different things. Our DNA is less like a script than a cookbook. It's a cookbook full of recipes for all the proteins and enzymes and chemicals your body needs. And on a day-to-day basis, your body is opening up that cookbook and going, I need more of that today than that. And it's all in that DNA cookbook. But it's not like a script. Your life has not been dictated by your DNA. That's not the way it works. So it's actually not what's in your DNA, but rather the kind of life that you're living that determines what chemicals get accessed out of that DNA on any given day. And it's not just what's happening in your life, it's also how you feel about it. And this has been one of the really, really big, strange conclusions which scientists have had to reach. Are we having a bad day at work where everything seems annoying and stressful and threatening? Well, if that's the case, then that will activate a stress response in your body, which calls for more hormones like cortisol to be released. Cortisol starts pushing through your bloodstream. That response will put your immune system on hold for a while. Your body makes choices. We're in a stressful situation. I'm not going to worry about that flu or cold right now. I need to run away from the tiger. That's the way it worked way back when. But now in modern life, we can be stressed not just for an hour or two, but for days and weeks on end if you've got a stressful job or a stressful family situation. Your body responds by saying, okay, I'm going to give you lots of cortisol. We're going to go into that cookbook and make a lot of cortisol. But that means that your immune system is depressed, not just for a couple hours, but for weeks and months at a time. And that can lay you open to getting all sorts of diseases, not just flus and colds, but your body's constantly generating cancer cells. That's always happening. And your immune system's getting rid of them. But people who are under high stress for long periods of time can become more susceptible to even those sorts of chronic acute and acute illnesses. On the other hand, if you're feeling relaxed most of the time, and you're eating well, and you're getting enough sleep, then your body will call on different chemicals. And the immune system will do a better job at fighting off viruses and infections. The secret to human health and well-being is not in our DNA, but how we live and use that DNA. All this time, we are expecting the secret of human life to be in our genes. Turns out, the secret is in how we are feeling and reacting to the world around us. The science tells us that to know us, we need to know what kind of relationships we're having with the world and how we feel about it. Fight or flight, relax or enjoy. That's as important to your physical and mental health as anything in your genes. Feeling optimistic, for instance, means believing that the universe is not a hostile place, that it's not fundamentally against you. That if something goes wrong today, there's a pretty good chance that things will go better tomorrow. That's the way an optimist sees the world. A famous study of 180 nuns found that optimists outlive pessimists by almost 10 years. And the way they figured that out was that they found these nuns and they went back and they found diaries which they'd written in their early 20s, and they analyzed them to see who was an optimist and who was a pessimist. And then they looked to see what happened at their end of their lives. How many got to be 85? How many got to be in their 90s? And the optimists, the ones who were feeling pretty good about life back in their early 20s, outlived the pessimists by almost 10 years. People who have a positive attitude tend to get less depressed and even recover from surgery a little more quickly. And optimism can be learned. It's not written into your DNA. It's an attitude where we learn to be glad to be part of the world and we enjoy our place in it, even if that may not seem very realistic to others. In today's psalm, we're told that the sun rejoices, is glad to rise and go across the sky like an athlete in a race. And that the stars, night after night, day after day, share their worldless wisdom with the entire world. On the human level, the psalmist sounds like an optimist. God's laws gladden the heart and refresh the soul. The writer rejoices in the rules that God has provided for human beings. It's better to give than to steal. It's better to help than to kill. It's so funny, right? When we think about the laws, handed down in the Ten Commandments, we see those as, well, I don't really like anybody telling me what to do. But if you think about it, those basic laws in the Ten Commandments are pretty good to live by. When you leave this church, you're probably confident that your car will still be in the parking lot. A lot of people resisted the temptation to steal your car. And now with our fancy cars with their fobs, it's actually become easier to steal cars, right? I'm not going to explain why. But it's become easier. There's ways to use fancy computers to steal your car without ever breaking into your car. But every time your car hasn't been stolen, that means there's lots and lots of people around you who don't feel like stealing your car. We don't look at it that way. We tend to focus on the bad, that there's car stealing rings. But fact is, most people are obeying the laws that God handed down, which is don't steal stuff. Most people are there, and we are better for it. Same thing is true when you walk down the street. You're probably not afraid of being killed. Right? It happens sometimes, yes, but most of the time, no. Every time we're not killed, that means someone else didn't kill us. They knew that they shouldn't kill us. That is a blessing. And we take these things for granted. But the psalmist is saying each one of those commandments, those suggestions for living, is a blessing and makes our society possible. That we have an option whether we opt into the natural order which stretches from the human heart all the way to the stars. And when we agree to live according to that set of ethics which God has handed down, life is better. The stars spread a wordless wisdom day and night. Our science is still discovering those secrets, which have sustained life on this planet for 3.7 billion years. Biology is still surprising us. They thought we had 100,000 genes. They were off by 5 times. It's anyone's guess what else we will learn in the decades ahead. But one thing is clear. Having a sense of belonging, to be thankful that we are here in this wonderful natural order, is not just wise, it's good for us. That attitude can give you a longer and better life, and a more enjoyable one. And that is a blessing worth remembering on Thanksgiving Day and every day. Amen.